Hi, I'm Steve Addison, and this is the Movements Podcast, the podcast for people who want to multiply disciples and churches everywhere. Today we're in Los Angeles talking to JT Timblin, Rick Preato, Mike Puckett, and Troy Cooper about the breakthroughs they're seeing in multiplying disciples and churches throughout the region.
We just came out of a meeting 2 days ago on 4 different streams, 4 of the many different streams out of LA, movement streams. And we kind of got together with leadership, and that was a real blessing, certainly to each stream to learn from one another, critique one another, encourage one another, and just really see what God's doing holistically and not just in the one that we tend to focus on. That was very eye-opening.
So JT, just describe what a stream is.
Well, I kind of see it. A stream is a group of churches that are multiplying and kind of coming out of one stream that are connected. But then there's a couple of those. Well, there are 4 at that, and there's others happening in Los Angeles too. And we're just watching like, man, God seems to be doing this over here. How can we learn from that? But it's the same principles, the same tools, the same big vision, but God seems to work different with different people. So just watching the different streams and how they got there and learning from some people that are ahead of us and some people that maybe could learn from what we're doing too.
So you're saying you're getting to multiple generations of disciples and churches in LA.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. One of the networks that is personal and really exciting for a lot of us at the table right now is Zeal Church. And we're seeing God work through this network of friends, several different oikos, relational networks. People are coming to Christ, getting baptized, being discipled, and then turning around and discipling right away. And even these past weeks since we last got on the podcast and shared about it, we've seen more baptisms. I think they're up to in the teens of baptisms, the late teens, 18, 19, 20 baptisms in there. And the majority of those are sticking around and seeing discipleship, experiencing it, turning around and baptizing others. One of the networks that we're at the gathering on Saturday is Zeal Church, which started in August. And in August, California was pretty deep in lockdown. And in the midst of it, there was a network of house churches out here that put on worship gatherings at the beach. And they began to see many, many people who were far from God showing up at these worship gatherings, getting baptized, and then hungry for community. That was the climate that we were seeing down here. And so Troy and myself and Jenny went to one of the last of the first stretch of worship gatherings. And we showed up at the beach, and they're singing, and they give a 4-minute gospel presentation. And then they say, all right, who wants to get in the water and be baptized? And they had asked Troy and I to come out and baptize. And so we're standing there, and these 2 girls walk up to us and say, we want to be baptized. And one of them had just been rescued by Jesus out of human trafficking. And her story was mind-blowing. She said, I'm his now. I want to follow Jesus. And so the other girl with her was somebody she had led down a path of darkness and crystals and spiritual worship, and now was leading her to Jesus, bringing her along for this journey. So we got to baptize these 2 girls, and their friend was with them, who was a guy. The 3 of them come back to our home, and we begin to just share from 2 Corinthians their new identity in Jesus, and, spent some time just caring for them because of the trauma they were in, praying together. We worshiped Jesus that night. And then Troy and Rachel just said, hey, we as a church want to walk with you guys. That's our heart. Is that what you want? And they said, yes, that's what we want. So day in and day out, we began with these new disciples, walking them through the commands of Christ. And the second they saw the church circle, they knew that God could do that among their lost friends and family. And so they took the story of what God had been doing and shared it and said, will you come to the next gathering where we do the commands of Christ? They shared the gospel there. They offered baptism, and it began like dominoes to fall in their friend group of one after another who said, I see the change in your life. I hear the gospel and believe it, and I want to follow Jesus. Will you baptize me? That was the tone of everybody that showed up. Before long, they had a name for the church. It was Zeal Church. And they saw from Acts 2 from the Bible, latching onto the church circle and saying, yeah, we really believe this is church. And this is what it's going to take, not just to grow in Jesus together, but to see Newport Beach and Costa Mesa reached with the gospel. That began to be their heart. So not long after that, it's still not long after that, but not long after they named Zeal Church, God began to grow in one of the leaders this vision to see Newport Beach and Costa Mesa completely covered in churches where everybody was going to hear the gospel. It was a no place left vision for 700 churches to be planted. And every week at church, these new believers are casting this vision from the Bible and saying, we believe God's going to start 700 churches. And so it's been a story after another story after another story of hearing the gospel, believing, and then stepping into some deep dive discipleship. And so using the commands of Christ as a platform, we're digging into family issues, relationship issues, and everything, in between as far as brokenness. The backgrounds they're coming out of are unbelievable. So
Rick, normally we'd sort of say, well, do all that deep work and then release them. They're made whole, then release them to go minister. But it sounds like the two things are happening at the same time.
Yeah. I think it'd be really interesting if somebody said that to one of these disciples, because they've got the Holy Spirit pouring out of them. And I don't think anybody could stop them from sharing if they tried. They believe that it's actually good news that rescued them. And all we've done is reinforce that from the Bible and given them simple ways to share. So 3 circles they've used. When they don't have 3 circles, they'll share anyway. They'll share with anything, because I think they're just seeing themselves being transformed. So they've got a lot of growing to do, but they're not holding back on leadership while they grow. They're being, pushed by God to, advance in spiritual responsibility and authority as they lead others to him. And
you've got your eyes on 2 things. One is, how are they growing in Christ, coming out of brokenness? And at the same time, what's the Lord doing through them to multiply disciples and churches?
That's right. And the picture that it would be, it would be a mistake to have a picture of us with them going through a command of Christ every week. There's been a lot of time invested. So we've got a commands of Christ gathering in their church once a week, but the church is meeting multiple times a week, whether it's them getting together, for accountability time, or just to pray, or to, dive into an issue in the Bible. These guys, we're spending time with them, but they're spending a lot of time with one another. And so it's not happening rapidly, but a lot of things are beginning to happen at the same time.
I was with a couple of the guys who are leading some of the different networks, and one in particular, their network is focused primarily on reaching unreached people groups around the city. And they've identified at least 63. You know how these lists are. It's just really difficult to try to get an established list, of who's here and who's not. But they've got at least 63 people groups that they've identified around Los Angeles. And their vision is to see a multiplying church planted among each one of the UPGs here in LA. And then actually, to add to that, they also want to see the work go back to the home country of all of these peoples. So as they've been saying, it's a 63 church vision. It really is a 126 church vision, one here and one there. And they have engaged with already, I think it was 44 different nations just in the last 4 years since they've moved to the city. And even now, they're seeing some measurable progress amongst quite a few different UPGs. But the beauty of it is in this season, we're starting to see them not just go after unreached people groups and begin to see some people come to faith or some new spiritual interest as God is opening doors into the hearts of people who are coming from what we would call closed nations. We're actually seeing them be conduits or connecting points for some of these other networks to help activate them to begin engaging with unreached people groups in their areas of the city. And Tim has just been engaging people from the nations in his apartment complex. It's a massive apartment complex, super diverse. People from all over the world are in this place. And they've engaged with a Chinese family that are here that speak Mandarin and speak English as well. And as Tim began to engage with them, offered prayer to them, and began to offer to read the Bible with them, they said, yeah, we'd be willing to. They have almost no spiritual background whatsoever, and they've begun meeting. And what is amazing is just in the last couple of weeks, the man's name is Wong. Wong told Tim that if it hadn't been for coronavirus, they would definitely be back in China right now, but they can't go back because of all the lockdowns. And so they're here. And as they've been here, they've connected with Tim, and now they're reading the Bible with Tim and his wife, Lauren. And they're starting to say, I think I understand why people read the Bible and follow the Bible. I think we understand that. And I think maybe God sent the coronavirus or allowed the coronavirus so that we would be here to be able to learn to read the Bible and learn more about God. And we feel like we're almost there. And it's like Tim will be the first one to say, if you know him, Tim will be the first one to say, God's Spirit is moving. He's the one who's doing it. And yet getting to see, this new harvest that's coming. And so it's just been really amazing to watch how God is getting the gospel to the nations through his people right here in a place that, they're sort of stuck in some ways.
Yeah. Did you have another story?
Yeah, I'd say what has been, that's anecdotal and exciting. But what has been the most encouraging to me actually was, so JT here and his crew, they were supposed to be on a mission trip to Africa, one of their regular trips, not that long ago, just a couple of months ago. And obviously they weren't able to go on that trip, but they connected with Tim, and we all connect regularly together here. And Tim was willing to host them for a local mission trip in an area that's got high density of Muslim peoples, and then some other areas as well. And they just did their mission trip locally. And so they were working hand in hand with Tim's team to go after some of the areas that Tim had identified, wanting to get the gospel to people from all the nations. And so it was this really beautiful partnership of people like this labor force, this harvest force in JT's Bridges team that was going to be overseas anyway, but couldn't be, bringing that to bear on Tim's harvest field that he's working locally. And so you've got this experience of people who are really good on short-term mission teams focused on evangelism, disciple-making, church planting, bringing that to bear here on the local field. And for that matter, also we're seeing not only are they helping Tim, but Tim is helping connect them with new areas in their harvest field that they've not connected with before, to the point where more of them are starting to say, even within JT's own community, are saying, we need to start going after some of these new areas and some of these new people groups. And it's sparking this, this excitement for them. And because that has happened, it's setting a precedent for some of the other networks that are here too, saying, one other guy, Sean, who's in West LA, has a vision to plant 100 churches and mobilize 100 units to the nations. Sean is saying, Tim, I'm bringing you some of my people. We're going to do this together. I want a piece of this. I don't know what it looks like. We don't know when we're going to do it, but we're going to do this because Sean has a huge heart for the nations. And so we're just starting to see, it's not just that there are these separate streams that are unique unto themselves, that you have Bridges and JT and their whole, network of leaders and churches. And you have Tim and the Here to There network, and you have Sean and so on and so forth. But now they're starting to overlap to serve each other. And it's not just that they each have strengths and weaknesses, but now they're starting to blend those things to help connect dots that otherwise were left unconnected.
Yeah, and I don't thank God for COVID, but I do for the quarantine. So it didn't allow us to go to Africa, but it allowed us to go into the nations in Anaheim and Irvine down the street. And our heart has always been the Horn of Africa. And we found 2 different Ethiopian churches that we didn't know existed, small pockets of believers. We were working with different ethnic groups. In fact, in Tim's apartment complex, in 2 weeks, we engaged, literally prayed for or shared the gospel with, I think it was 19 different countries, just in those two weeks, just going into his apartment complex alone. And that's the nations. The nations have come here, and so they're living there. They're incarnationally moved into there, but we're right down the street. So now we have this partnership, and we do different ways to support what they're doing, and we're learning from them all the time. And so it was a really eye-opening. And now we've come back and challenged our legacy community of church to say, hey, we have the nations right down the street. We already have a relationship and a heart for, in particular, North Africa. And there's a bunch of people groups right there. And so we're now engaging with refugee work right here as they come across. And my friend Steve and I, we're going door to door, just knocking on apartment doors, offering prayer and, offering masks and just saying, hey, and people that didn't like masks, we said, well, you can't go to the grocery store without one. So they're like, okay. So we didn't go political. We just said, we're here to serve. And some people really were appreciative of having that. And just walking in and sensing through prayer where people are sensitive. What do they want to hear? What do they want to do? Trying to think of this one family. The husband was a little bit standoffish. The wife was much more open. And just paying attention to their kids and saying, we don't speak, my husband doesn't speak the language, my kids are learning, but man, you got down and knelt down and talked to my children. And then we started talking, and they're from Kazakhstan and just here for maybe a week and a half. They've only been here for about a week and a half. And she said, we've not engaged with anybody else since we've been here. And then slowly her husband started listening and warming up to us. We had a chance to share the gospel and briefly. And yeah, just those kind of conversations, realizing that no one's engaging with these precious people that God's died for, and let alone told them that there's a God out there who loves them and died on their behalf. Yes. Wow. And the neat thing is most of these folks, because they've never come to America, they've never engaged with Americans yet, they don't have some of the baggage. When you offer prayer, they're like, oh, great, come on in. Because their culture is much more open to, hospitable. And so Muslim background, people that we're engaged with, and all kinds of ethnicities, Buddhist, Hindu. Yeah. And again, they haven't been conditioned like many Americans to say, oh, we don't let you in our home. They'll let you in. And we have tea and coffee and sit and share with them. That's cool. It was really a blessing. And then we know Tim is living there incarnationally. And as they have questions, we just, his team is the ones who follow up right away in that particular apartment complex. But then
we're just learning the importance of starting a church in your home. JT, that was one of, I think, the most significant things he did. Pastoring a church that he planted 20 years ago, went through the training cycle, and Rick challenged him at the end of the training cycle, start a church in your home. And so he started a church in his home, and he's got multiple streams, including a 4th generation stream in Southern California flowing out of this church that's in his home. Even those of us who are catalyzing work, among church planters, training believers to start churches. We started a church in our home with, the Pucketts and the Preatos and others, and a few others have come. And just the significance of that for us but also for others to come and learn within the context of a church gathering. And I didn't realize how significant that would be until this quarantine, this lockdown, where a lot of people are not able to gather for church. And we are. My goodness, just this last week, Rick mentioned Zeal Church down in Newport, Costa Mesa area, a 4-month-old church of almost entirely new believers that have been baptized. I think there's one guy who, Shane, the guy has emerged as the leader. I'd say he's the person of peace. Came to faith a couple of years ago. And he's the one who brought the 2 girls to the Saturate event that Parker and Jesse from Salt Churches were hosting. But other than that, everyone is brand new out of the harvest. And they are loving being together. I mean, Steve, I would have never thought an entry strategy would be do a worship gathering. I mean, we're talking, like the one that Parker and Jesse led where they saw over 1,000 baptisms in 6 weeks. And we got to just, we got to be a part of probably a dozen of those, but 2 of them are the ones that have led to Zeal Church. Shane turned around a week later and with those 2 girls that we baptized, and they said, let's invite our friends and do a worship gathering in Raleigh's backyard. And I'm thinking, there's no way, but I'm not going to tell them, no, don't do this. I'm thinking, what lost person wants to come to a worship gathering? Well, they had like 36 people show up. And they did some worship. Maya and Malachi got to help out a little bit. And Shane told the story of the woman at the well and then shared his testimony. And I told him, I was like, bro, I think you need to be ready for some baptisms tonight. I just feel like there's I think I told you this in the last episode we did, as we're hearing from the 50 plus teams across California that have been laboring, JT for 20 years, others for the last 2, no bites, hardly any green lights that we've seen in the last 2.5 years that we've been here. And then all of a sudden in May and June, across Northern California, Southern California, San Diego, the fish are biting. People are saying yes to Jesus. People are literally coming saying, I want to get baptized. So it's like the Holy Spirit has just turned on and he's saving people. But because there's no churches, people don't have a place to go and get discipled and get connected in community. And so these worship gatherings, I think, have just served as a place for people to go. As we're baptizing people, we probably baptized at the worship gatherings, I don't know, we personally probably just baptized 20 people. And I'll ask them hey, why do you want to get baptized? Boom. And it's like they got saved in quarantine. All of them. Oh man, I've been living a life of sin and I just wanted to follow Jesus. Is anybody walking me? No, I've been dying for a church, will you please baptize me? And because there's these networks of house churches, these folks are able to get in community and be discipled.
So Troy, it's not just a shift in terms of harvest, but also in terms of disciples and churches coming out of the harvest.
Yes. Yeah, because like Rick said, when we did Command 1 with Raleigh and Cassidy, Command 1 is repent and believe in the gospel. And just using a basic 3/3 format or pattern of care. We've chosen to use the Acts 2 church circle for the vision part as we're going through those commands. And it really lays out a blueprint for discipleship. What's a healthy disciple? What's a healthy church? It just landed with them. We had them practice it. And then they came to Movement Church, the church that meets in our home the next day. So this is day 3 for their, after baptism. And they brought some friends and we got to the vision and they were firing off all the things from the church circle. It was they took ownership of it. Mm-hmm. And we got to the end of our 3/3 time. And I was like, man, we got 5 new believers here and 2 lost friends with them. So I'm all right, so let's, we wrote out what the 3/3, hey, this is the pattern we just did. And we started to assign roles for the next week. just to try to release it to them. And they were fighting for who was going to do the truth circle. They just loved it. So I feel like that. And as we've noticed a number of different churches that are reproducing, it's like church circle is the sauce, man. It's the word of God. I mean, it's just the Acts 2 vision for church. It's just landing with them. Well, going back to like when they hosted that worship gathering in their backyard, like not even a week after those girls got baptized. They did worship, Shane shared, and then, we got to the end of the time and it was like ready to like offer baptism for people. Cause it just seemed like the Lord was stirring. And Shane's like, hey, you guys got anything else? And we're like, yeah, why don't you give people a chance to respond? And he's like, okay, anybody? And 4 hands shot up that want to get baptized. The 2 girls that had just been baptized were like, who's going to do the baptisms? And we said, you are. And they're like, we don't remember. So like Maya and Malachi got in the pool with them and let them practice just so they could, like, hey, remember do this? And so that was really cool. So they got in and Maya and Malachi got to help these 3 new disciples baptize these 4 disciples. And it was amazing. They did exactly what we did with them. They said, this is your identity. And and in fact, I was like, hey, let me get a picture. And they're like, no, we have to do identity. Like, okay. 2 Corinthians 5, they read verse 17 to 21, their new identity in Christ. And then they said, it was amazing to hear them. They said, we want to walk with you in discipleship and show you from the Bible how to follow Jesus. When can we get together? How's tomorrow? And so we got to explain to them, like, hey, we want to come and assist you as we modeled. Now we're going to assist you. And so seeing them all go downstream was amazing. But it was so interesting. One of the boys, Noah, who was there that night with his girlfriend, a few weeks before had literally stolen a Bible from Barnes and Noble. Like he was just hungry. I know you can't make this stuff up. And I said, hey man, how I saw you raise your hand. Like, tell me what's going on. He's like, man, he said, when I walked in tonight and I saw the water, I knew I was getting baptized. I'm like, how is it? He's like, I don't know. He's like, God's been pursuing me. I know it. I've been living a life of sin. I'm ready to follow him. And so they've got strong testimonies. We meet the next week, or no, we meet like 2 days later. Cause this is like, they haven't started school yet. So we're with them like all the time. And they're going around, they get to, accountability. And Raleigh says, why don't you all tell what what you have repented of? Well, that's not in our question, but I'm like, okay, we'll go with it. They're going around confessing all this sexual sin and demonic practices and new age and crystals. And we get to her boyfriend, and he's a lifeguard in Newport. Like, everybody looks up to this guy. He goes, I don't really like Christians. I don't really want to be around you guys, to be honest with you. But I've seen what's happened in their life. And he was out on the boat, so it was like the big time lifeguards on the boat. He said, I was on the boat today by myself, and all day I prayed, God changed my heart. So I want to see what happens. Well, that was 4 months ago. Just on Sunday, we got to baptize him. On the beach that he lifeguards at. And he's standing out there. His mom's there, his sister's there, and all these new believers and some lost kids that know him. And he's like, Troy, the stuff that I used to love to do, he's like, I'm around my roommates and my lost friends. And he's like, I can't believe the stuff that they want to do. He's like, and I used to want to do that. He's like, God has taken those desires away from me. And all I want to do now is just tell them about him. I want them to experience the freedom that I have and the life that I have. It's like, I want to do this. They've started meeting for Zeal Church Gathering every Wednesday night. And there's about 30 some people there. They surf. And so there's times that they'll be with each other at least two or three times a week. They're a friend group, so they're together all the time. Rick and myself, or Jenny, or Allie, Carter's cousin, she lives out here now, and she's serving on our team. are with them, one of them probably every other day. And so we're seizing opportunities, whether it's over a meal or, at the beach while they're surfing, or before or after the church gathering. Like last night, we had a baptism down in Laguna with 3 of them. And there was like 17 of them piled in my 12 passenger van. And we, I got to sit next to Ari and we had a great conversation on a number of things. Today we stopped by his work with the boys and we're just, talking about the Lord. They have this phrase where I always talk about, we want to get in the Word. We want to get in the Word. And so there's this culture there when they're talking about things, they're opening up the Word, whether it's at the park, at the coffee shop, they're busting out their phones. What does the Word say about this? Like that's a part of their DNA is, getting in the Word together. Rick and Jenny are investing a lot, having people over in their home. They'll come up to our house, like they were with us. Some of them were with us for Thanksgiving. I think one of the things that we're noticing is, especially down there, Newport is the wealthiest city in the United States. And they are desperate for fathering. A lot of them are looking for fathering. And I think that a number of them are really attracted. They want to be around Rachel and I's marriage. They want to be around our home. They want to be around, Rick and Jenny's marriage, Buck and Kelly's marriage. They love seeing Maya and Malachi as a family. Us, that Maya and Malachi come quite a bit. They help lead worship and they did some baptisms and they speak into things. So I know it's a very, I hate to use the word messy. It is messy, but it's daily, daily with them, but daily we're seeing. There was a point where it was like daily, God's adding to their number daily. Yesterday, we had the baptism. Well, let me back up. I told you I got like 1,000 stories. I'm sorry. Last Wednesday, we gathered at Zeal. We're meeting in a home. We've met in probably 3 or 4 different homes. We're meeting in Noah and Caleb's home, the Sons of Thunder. These guys are the Sons of Thunder, all right? And they're hosting. We do burgers together. They're eating. It's beautiful. It's outside with lights. Powerful time of worship. I noticed there's an unusual number. Usually there's like 1 or 2 lost friends that'll show up, but we had like 8. And one girl, we'll call her Lynn. She expressed that she was deeply involved in witchcraft, demonic worship, and she was ready to surrender to Jesus and get this out of her life. She had been actually talking to people about Jesus on her social media platform, and she was experiencing some intense demonic oppression and persecution from like the witchcraft community locally and online. And so we get to the end and she just says, I'm ready to follow Jesus. I want to be baptized. And she, through tears, she said, I have wanted this for a little while now, but I didn't have anywhere to go. I'm so glad I have this church family that you guys have welcomed me. We got to baptize her yesterday. And her dad came and her grandfather came. So last night after the baptisms, the 3 girls, 2 girls and then Caleb, Noah's brother, one of the Sons of Thunder. We went to a restaurant, and they're not allowed to let people eat outside anymore. And so this group just sat in the parking lot, set up chairs, beach chairs and blankets, and just sat out in the parking lot, and we're eating Mexican food. And people were, hey, who are you guys? And they talked about Jesus. They talked about how they just had these baptisms. So Christians were like, who are you guys? Oh, that's so cool. Wow, praise God. We haven't been able to meet for weeks or months. So that's so cool. You guys do it. Lost people are like, who are you guys? They're sharing the gospel. I'm sitting across from a guy who came to the baptism. He's lost, and he's a Buddhist background guy, and I'm able to go through parts of creation to Christ with him. It's like this snowball that's gaining momentum. When I was in Haiti with Jacob Vai, and I remember him walking down the street with his like 12 to 15 disciples, and it was like this group of older teenage, early 20s, and they're joking around, they're goofing around, but they're having fun, but they're sharing the gospel. They're ministering to people. They're coming back with three lost people that they're ministering to when they get back home. That's happening now in Newport. You've got this herd of brand new believers, some lost friends, and people are, like, it's an entry strategy now. Like, just go out there together, and people are hearing the gospel. And we have 3 people that had the gospel share with that they're getting followed up with by these new disciples. That just happened last night. And so that's the first time where it's actually broken outside of Oikos, is just this herd of new believers out in public. So I don't know, Steve, some of these things were not in my playbook, but we're having to be flexible and in tune with what the Holy Spirit's doing. We're learning from these new disciples a ton. And I'm excited.
Well, what God is doing in LA, he can do in other places. So I'd like you to do 2 things. One, visit movements.net, where you'll find links and training opportunities and resources to help you implement what you're learning. The second thing I'd like you to do is I want to recommend this podcast episode to others who would benefit from it. This is Steve Addison for the Movements Podcast.